It's going to be only America first.
All of this with the global warming and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay?
The golden era of America is now underway, believe me.
Trump and the environment. When the president tweets about it, all of America reads it. People react interested, amused, or simply angry.
Donald Trump, I'm looking at you. I want you to drink this filthy water. I want you to breathe this filthy air. You ain't got the guts to do it. You ain't man enough to do it.
Withdrawal from climate treaties. Trump divides states also when it comes to the environment. Economy versus nature. Where is America heading? Searching for clues in a torn country.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees.
Mount Hope, West Virginia. Whoever lives here breathes coal for a lifetime. But black gold is not the energy of the future. Jobs have been dwindling for years. But when the tall white man came from New York, he promised jobs. Campaigning can be so easy sometimes.
We're going to put the miners back to work. We're going to put the miners back to work. We're going to get those mines open.
Trump has won the largest share of votes in West Virginia ever. He is a vocal advocate for mining, omnipresent in the media. Opponents of the policy, such as activist Paul Corbett Brown, strike a softer note.
So this is coal. This is what the conversation's all about these days. From the very beginning, since the early 1800s, when they first started mining coal here, we've had a love-hate relationship with it. In the beginning, they mined this coal by hand, digging and tunneling into the mountains. These days, because it's cheaper, they just blow up the whole mountain to get to the coal.
Takeoff. The activist wants to show the damage that this special form of open-pit mining leaves behind. The summit blasts to get at the coal aren't Trump's invention. Since the 1960s, over 500 mountain peaks have been blown away and toxic substances released. In the meantime, mining has decreased, but with Trump, the activist fears, the explosions will increase again, and thus the threat of arsenic and mercury.
We know how dangerous this type of mining is because of the heavy metals it's releasing into our water systems and our clean water supplies. So now that we know these things, we should do better.
But it's just an easy way to get money. The Appalachian Low Mountain Range has undergone fundamental changes. A large part of the forest stock is lost forever. There are fewer insects, and also the home for mammals like bears was simply blown away. Trump sees coal mining as a huge market of the future, wants to subsidize it and cut down restrictions. The West Virginia Coal Association is particularly pleased about this. Vice President Chris Hamilton even presented Trump with a helmet.
What you find with mountaintop mining, or like surface mining, almost like underground mining, the effects are very temporary. I mean, it's just a temporary disruption of that forest bed, and then we come back and we reclaim, we treat water, and you typically have a place that's has a much higher quality than what it had before mining ever took place.
Environmental activist Paul Corbett Brown, too, comes from a family who made their living with mining. Nevertheless, coal is the past for him, because for him the future mustn't look like this, destroyed and without life.
Well, if you look at this mountain that's relatively untouched by mining, you'll find that there's more than 1,000 distinct species of life living in that forest. It's one of the most biodiverse places in the world. And then if you look here after mining, there's not any of those species. There's maybe 5 or 6 species of plants here.
While the environmentalist would like to have nature back, Chris Hamilton backs up Trump's vision. He too sees plenty of potential for the barren landscape.
We have example after example. You'll probably find nowhere else in the world where we are coming in after the mining phase and building commercial, recreational activities or industrial sites. We have factories, we have retail centers, we have regional jails, we have mountaintop resorts that are built and conference centers.
Montana in the northwest of the United States. Lame Deer, the forced home of some 2,000 Northern Cheyenne Indians who were exiled to this reserve over 100 years ago. At that time, it was still closely connected to nature, but today, the connection is more spiritual. Philip Whiteman is one of the spiritual leaders of the tribe. His songs also deal with the importance of bears for his people.
Noko, mother bear, bear. The Cheyenne word for mother. The mother that gave us life. The grizzly, the eagle, nature still follow those original instructions. Man has forgotten those original instructions.
The grizzly is holy to the Cheyenne, and of all animals, the Trump government wants to allow hunting it. This will get him votes from hunters and the gun lobby. For years, the grizzly has been a protected species. Trump wants this to stop. In general, there are just too many rules.
We have seen harmful and unnecessary restrictions on hunting, ranching, and responsible economic development.
I cannot put Trump and the grizzly bear in the same sentence of life. The mindset of the United States government and what it has done to my people, he's a reflection of that.
Whiteman refers to decades of discrimination against the Northern Cheyenne and other tribes. This has a political tradition in the USA. His son-in-law, Lawrence J. Kilsbeck, president of the Northern Cheyenne, takes us on a ride through Lame Deer.
Not many people here are supportive of Trump or even the Republican Party at that, because it's their policies that impact them.
A life without perspective. The consequences are extremely high unemployment, many drug addicts, and a high suicide rate. This is known from other tribes too. Lame Deer doesn't only look desolate on rainy days. There is hardly any support from the government.
Trump, I know he's a businessman, but he needs to stop looking at tribes as business entities. He needs to recognize that we are governments, we are sovereign governments, and he needs to have that same respect and relationship with us as he would other foreign governments, the state governments, and deal with us on a high level of consultation.
To regain this respect, the Northern Cheyenne are on a legal warpath. In court, they want to fight for the protection of the grizzly bears. In order for this to work better, they have holy rituals which must not be filmed.
And this rock here, it tells it's a living rock. It's a motion picture rock.
The spiritual center for this is a few miles from Lame Deer. For the first time ever, the family of Lawrence J. Kilsbeck is allowed to accompany Philip Whiteman to this special place. The rock is full of drawings from nature and even the universe. In the center is the bear.
Right here, it's going to face near genocide.
For Philip Whiteman, Trump is a kind of figurehead of white society, which he says has long since cut its ties to nature.
What we do to Mother Earth, the air, land, and water, we will leave that for our future generations. Whether it be the grizzly or the bumblebee, you destroy the ecosystem.
The Cheyenne are not alone on their legal warpath. Support comes from world-leading grizzly researchers such as Louisa Wilcox and David Mattson. They provide technical arguments against the Trump administration's plans. It is estimated that there are still 1,700 bears in the region, and climate change is causing them major problems. In autumn, the grizzlies move to higher areas to look for high-fat food. They find it underneath pines with the help of rodents.
Yeah, so up there you can see cones right at the top of the tree. And so the red squirrel does the convenient thing of, you know, cutting them down to create middens that they rely on. And the grizzly bears listen for the squirrel chatter and locate those middens, and it's a really Big Mac deal.
This is where Trump could look at the consequences of climate change. The rising temperatures cause the bark beetle to spread and millions of pine trees die. Important food for the grizzly, destroyed.
All of these trees died because of an infestation of native beetles that get under the bark and make what they're called galleries.
The small vermin can multiply more frequently due to the warmer temperatures, even in high mountain regions, because it is no longer so cold there. For David Mattson, the dead trees are like memorials.
But this is a particularly stark bit of evidence that climate warming is happening. This is unprecedented. It's never happened before within the last several thousands of years.
Climate change is forcing grizzlies to seek food in other regions. Here, they meet animals that don't really belong there, cows. They graze in public areas, including nature reserves. Not a good idea, because grizzlies are omnivores. If they're hungry, they also snatch cows and involuntarily give advocates of hunting arguments.
So the kind of people who graze cattle in the heart of some of the best grizzly bear country we have a hotline to the politicians who are supportive of delisting. Why? Because they want to be able to kill more bears so their cattle can graze at taxpayers' expense with no carnivores around at all.
So
ants are another popular food of grizzlies. They smell the small protein bombs in old tree trunks, tear them apart with their bare claws and lick up the ants.
Oh, it was probably a grizzly.
Grizzlies have lived here longer than people, but they are not so important for Trump, says Louisa Wilcox.
I mean, his agenda is basically to get rid of these species. They don't matter. But they do matter. They're part of our natural legacy. They matter to a lot of people. And
the researcher sees the strategy behind this policy.
what Trump is doing to Muslims in this country is not unlike what he's doing to endangered wildlife like grizzly bears. I mean, it's the alien other that we somehow have to get rid of. This other that you can't control. And somehow that is dangerous to this country. Really? Doesn't that enrich this country? Having ethnic diversity in America, having species in America that were here when the Lewis and Clark expedition came across the West. Isn't that a blessing rather than a problem?
The hunting opponents recently won a first trial in Montana. The grizzly is still protected for the time being. However, Cheyenne and biologists are sure that the Trump administration will continue to fight for bear hunting rights.
I'm going down in Louisiana.
Venice, Louisiana.
Behind the sun.
For Louisiana and the other coastal states on the Gulf of Mexico, oil and gas are of enormous importance. The black gold is mined from countless sources, on land and in the ocean. Mistakes often have catastrophic consequences. When the Deepwater Horizon oil platform exploded in 2010, 11 workers lost their lives. Large parts of the coasts in the Gulf of Mexico were contaminated with oil. All attempts to contain the oil spill were unsuccessful. Millions of seabirds perished in agony.
We are a top producer of petroleum and the #1 producer of natural gas. We have so much more than we ever thought possible.
Trump doesn't seem to want to learn anything from the disaster. He is trying to boost the oil industry with investments and lifting regulations. The goal is independence from imports. George Pivick, manager of a supply port in the oil region, likes to hear that.
We believe that President Trump's policy will have a positive effect on oil and gas in general, and also in particular to the Venice Port Complex in the Gulf of Mexico, by rolling back some regulations that have been implemented in the last 5 to 8 years.
New boreholes, more production, that increases the risk.
The Deepwater Horizon incident was a tragic incident. We believe a lot of policies have been implemented to provide for a safer workplace for oil and gas activity in the Gulf of Mexico. And we're confident that a tragedy similar to that won't happen again anytime in the near future, and hopefully will never happen again.
This belief in technology has already led to the catastrophe in 2010. Scott Eustace followed it at the time. He is now working on the restoration and preservation of the unique nature reserves of the Gulf Coast in the Gulf Restoration Network.
So in 2011, we found tar like this, black in mats, all along the beach. So the cleanup effort has long stopped, but we see items like this continue to wash up since Deepwater Horizon.
But even 8 years after the catastrophe, the oil spill is still not over.
This tar has been rolled in the sand and hasn't been exposed to oxygen. So when you look at the middle, it's still volatile, and it still smells like fresh road, and so it's still toxic for a long time until all the action of the ocean can break it apart again and again into smaller and smaller pieces, releasing these chemicals.
Scott shows us how the lagoon is involved with oil and gas production. Everywhere in the lagoon, one can see boreholes that have not yet been exploited. The owners are waiting for oil prices to rise. The water here is only 1 meter deep. Before the oil catastrophe, there was almost only green marshland, which has now died in wide areas. Now, the old swamp house stands deserted in the water. One oil plant of hundreds in the lagoon. Very simple old technique.
The Trump administration wants to open all of the oceans to leasing all at once, which is very foolish. And so the government is not proceeding with any care for the environment, right?
Oil has always been a political lever. Trump uses it to secure jobs, but also makes targeted exceptions, as Scott Eustace knows.
As a political favor to Florida, the Trump administration is not going to expand drilling off of Florida because he wants that governor to succeed politically. So here we have a situation where the Trump administration is using offshore leasing as political punishment.
Because unlike Louisiana, Florida lives from tourism, and oil production like here could have a negative impact on tourist numbers. Holidaymakers are rather rare in this area, but old inhabitants are slowly coming back. Shrimps. Fat loot for the shrimp cutters. When the oil spill threatened the lagoon, all the fishermen were on duty to save what had long been lost. By all means, the government tried to bind the oil and keep it out of the lagoon, in vain. One of them, Robert Campo.
I'm going to tell you what my eyes saw. The amounts of dead fish that we saw out here, it was millions of pounds of fish.
Campo's getting the bow net ready for the oysters.
And you can hear it, the dredge on the bottom. You know, click, 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 click.
After a few rounds, he catches up with the bonet again.
No live oysters.
There was no salvation for the oysters. They had grown together with the ground, couldn't escape.
Nobody in there. Not even, there's one live one right there. That's a live one there. A survivor. All these dead oysters here, this is the result of one oil spill.
In the end, the fisherman finds only 6 live oysters in a catch of 150 kilos, even though the catastrophe was almost 10 years ago.
I should say, I like to be optimistic and say that this is going to come back one day, because I believe God will replenish this place one day. Pull and hatch it.
Even though the oil industry has taken his oysters from him, he believes in the very man who further increases the risk of an oil spill.
Yep, he's still living. Sure is. Oh, and I really do believe President Trump will help our fishermen one of these days. I feel strongly of that. He will.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River.
Back in West Virginia, the state in which coal rules and Trump critics are the minority. Mining, including the blasting of peaks, has a long tradition here. It creates jobs, but it also destroys nature and poses health risks.
Good morning. You Netta?
Environmental activist Paul Corbett Brown in the small village of Minden. People from here were also part of a study stopped by Trump in 2017. The National Academies of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine wanted to examine the health hazards posed by the summit blasts. Trump thought that was a waste of taxes. Now the inhabitants list their dead at the entrance to the village.
No, my mother died with small cell lung cancer, and that seems to be one of the major cancers that's happening in this area.
When you hear that someone has cancer, it's not shocking anymore to us at all, is it? I mean, it's not.
I mean, I've had three people lives across the street from me die of cancer in the same house.
There are strikingly many ill people and deaths in the region. But this is not a political issue, says Annetta Kaufman.
I still respect him as our president of the United States. I believe that you respect, who is leading your country. I would love to see him come here. I would love to see him actually meet some of the people here that are sick and dying, or meet the families of the people that have lost their children or their spouses or their parents, and look and see that, there are poisoning going on in this country. We don't live in a third world country.
When it comes to maximizing profits, the interests of people and nature are often of secondary importance. A connection between the many cancer diseases and mining seems obvious in West Virginia, but could only be proven by longer studies. But mining representatives like Chris Hamilton see no need for this.
I hear of that, one's personal recreation. Some of that's hereditary, some of it's because of smoking, some of it's because of poor dietary. I'm not sure working in or around a coal mine leads to health impacts.
Which we have quite a bit of high water.
The toxins are dangerous and invisible. They rarely come to light like this. Sometimes it is organic chlorine compounds such as PCB from old mining days. Sometimes it is arsenic from the peaks that gets into the drinking water. An often deadly mix.
And it goes into the creek.
Susie Worley Jenkins is a Republican and politically very active. She thinks Trump is being misinformed by the industry.
I think that it is from the oil industry, gas industry, that he's getting information that everything's okay, and that's not the case. It is not okay. And that's what they want him to hear, and that's what he hears. If he'd come down here and look at the people that has died down here because of this, because of the PCBs and this mines and stuff, and all of the stuff burning here for 20 years and killing all these people, maybe he'd have a better understanding. But all he gets is just like bits and pieces of stuff.
And would you vote for him again next time?
I'd have to leave that for next time because I don't know about that. I have to see some things first.
Paul Corbett Brown's father was also active in mining. Now he is seriously ill. In the beginning, his parents did not understand his actions against mining. But with the personal fate came the realization. Many of their friends are also ill. They think it's contaminated drinking water. Trump, they say, not only relies on the wrong energy, but also divides the country.
I don't want him here. I do not want him here. He's messed up enough problems in his state. We don't want him here. I don't want him here. Yeah, we got a so-called governor down there. He wants him. He changed politics after he got in office.
I think you'll always see a differing viewpoint from people, depending on their socioeconomic, their educational status, just their regular mindset. You're going to see different points of view. Unfortunately, I have many friends who are totally for him.
There is mistrust everywhere, even at the tap at home.
So this is our city water, the municipal source, but even this we can't trust. There are so many toxins in all of our water that we can't trust to drink this in water anymore. So from this point, most everyone in southern West Virginia, if they want to have safe water, they have to drink bottled water.
The connections between mining and poisoning are not provable, especially because the Trump government does not support, but rather blocks further research.
I've thought about it, and I'll tell you what I think about it. And Donald Trump, I'm looking at you. I want you to drink this filthy water. I want you to breathe this filthy air. You ain't got the guts to do it. You ain't man enough to do it. You won't do it. Oh, you're sitting up there on your little capitol on your Trump Tower. Oh, yeah, you're running your mouth. But you won't do things for people that you know that the people that you're, by God, you are responsible. You put your hand on the Bible and you swore to God to defend this country, not your wallet.
Trump stands for economy, not for environmental protection. He does not show a willingness to compromise. Of course, America needs a thriving economy, but at what price? Trump and nature, that doesn't fit yet. America first, but even he has to ask himself what kind of world he wants to leave to his grandchildren.